Hello and welcome to Quantitative Evidence for Development, or the QED module. And in this introductory and overview lecture, I'm going to talk about quantitative research design. Now, in the lecture, these are the points we'll cover. First of all, what exactly is quantitative research design and why do you need it? Then we'll talk about what makes for good quantitative research design in terms of characteristics. And then the last part of the lecture will be on some different types of design: descriptive designs, experimental designs, and quasi-experimental designs, which we'll then move on to find out more about in the lectures that come after this one. So, first of all, what is quantitative research design and what is it needed for? Well, here we come to our fish. Now, the picture of the fish is taken from one of my favourite philosophy books, which is Pragmatism, written in 1907 by William James, one of the leaders of the pragmatist movement and brother of Henry James, a famous novelist, probably more famous than him actually. And his insight was that when you're studying life, for example, as we do in the social sciences, there is definitely a very important place for theory, a place for logical argument, for abstract concepts, for rational debate and so on. But he says that most of the things we study in the real life, all these things like logic and theory and argument, they're used and they have a role to play, but they're mixed in with reality. So just as for a fish, the oxygen that a fish needs to breathe is mixed in with all the other elements, the things it needs to survive in the water. So James's argument was that the way that we use arguments and ideas in practice is mixed in with our everyday experience of getting through life and getting things done. And he pointed out that there are some kinds of fish that, even though they exist in the water, they survive on oxygen in the water, they do get some benefit for their life, and they've evolved to fly out of the air and take giant gulps of oxygen and then to dive back down into the water again. And he says that that's similarly for people studying life. It can be useful to do that. Come out of the water, you study logic, you think in terms of pure abstract things, you have long chains of reasoning. But the warning that James said was, just as the fish, although it gets a benefit from some pure oxygen, if the fish stays outside of the water for too long just drinking oxygen, the fish is going to have a bad end. He said the same thing applies to humans. If you entirely give yourself over to just logic and abstract thinking without looking back at reality and how that logic fits into reality, then you're going to go astray in the same way that the fish will. So what you need is to check back frequently between the world of pure logic and where these logical models and arguments are actually embedded in reality in people's lives. So research design is the question of how you do that. What's your plan for getting away from the couch or off the computer and out into the world to find out how all the arguments that you're making in abstract terms really stack up in reality? So how are you going to get a reality check, as William James almost certainly wouldn't have called it, before you end up like the flying fish who gets stuck out of the water? So that's the role of research design. And getting on to more concrete terms, to expand a little into more specific terms that have to do with research. Within research design, which is the overall logic of how the whole argument and plan is going to fit together, within that you have research methods, which are the specific quantitative techniques. Okay, how am I going to look at some correlation? How am I going to do some hypothesis testing here, or use an analysis of variance method? All the things you'll learn about this semester that you maybe haven't met already. So how are those particular techniques going to fit together to help me link experience and theory together? So if the research design is the overall logical structure, research methods is the detail, the nitty-gritty. And basically, if you're using quantitative research methods, then it's a quantitative research design. So let's make it even more concrete and get well away from fish. An example that many people in dev care about is deforestation and firewood, and the possible relationship between these two things. And there is evidence of large impacts of firewood on deforestation. So let's say you want to study this. Well, one thing you could do is you could go and visit an area, you could ask people there to describe what they do every day. Individually, you could have a focus group of people talking about the changes they've observed in the forest during their lives. You could, during recent times, you could observe and take part yourself, live in the forest, get involved in daily activities, do participant observation. You can collect life histories from older people to try and find out the trajectory of their life and how their activity has interacted with environmental change. So you could do all of that. Or alternatively, you could go and you could measure in terms of quantities how much a family is using in terms of wood. You could find historic data from records offices on what the population was, use aerial or recently satellite images to measure the forest cover in terms of numerical hectares, coverage, percentage of forest, percentage of scrub, percentage of deforested area, and so on. And that will give you another approach. So the first set is you're using qualitative methods, and the second set of methods is using quantitative methods. So you'd end up with a qualitative or a quantitative or a mixed methods research design if you use both of those. And they certainly all have their role. So what is quantitative research design and why is it needed? Well, it's an overall plan for how are you going to use some evidence to address the research aims. And it encompasses everything from data collection, how you're going to analyse that data using all sorts of methods, and then how you're going to interpret the results. And really, the overall design is essential when it comes to interpret the results, particularly as you'll find out as you go through the semester. Certain assumptions about the way you've gone about collecting and analysing the data are important for the way you can interpret the results. However, there's also a certain sort of chicken and egg type situation with research design, in that, okay, research design is the overall plan you're supposed to have, and then within that you fit your methods. But of course, you have to know some methods before you can do a design. Just like in the kitchen, you've got to know a certain amount about how you boil things, how you fry things, how you chop things up, how you keep ingredients cold, you select things, but before you can decide, okay, I'm going to plan some big meal. Or if you're going to design a piece of clothing, you're going to knit a bit of knitwear, you're going to need to know about different types of yarn, you need to know about different types of how to cast on, increases, decreases, invisible stitches and so on, how to keep a consistent tension, that sort of thing. You need to know that nitty gritty before you can decide, okay, what's my jumper going to look like? The same thing is there. It's a bit of a chicken and egg with research design. You have to have the overall plan in mind, but also think about the individual methods. If the methods aren't going to work, then you need to revise the design. So it's a sort of, there should really be a dialogue between the two levels. Okay, that's research design, which is your overall plan. In the next section, we'll look at some desirable characteristics of research design. What do we think makes for good research design? And how do we know when we have that? But I'm going to save that for the next video. So for now, thanks for watching.